I used to think betrayal had a face. Maybe a stranger, a coworker, a mysterious woman from another life. Someone seductive, dramatic, with lipstick on the collar or perfume on a receipt. But never, never my sister. Not the girl I shared bunk beds with. Not the person who helped pick out my wedding dress, who cried more than me at the ceremony. Not the woman who toasted to our love, who called my husband the big brother she never had. I was wrong. Betrayal doesn't always come with a warning. Sometimes it wears a familiar smile and walks in through the front door with her own key. Started on a Thursday. Quiet, regular Thursday. I came home early. One of my clients had canceled our session, so I had a rare free afternoon. I was excited. Thought we'd cook dinner together, maybe open some wine. We'd been distant lately. He'd been tired, distracted. I thought maybe some quality time would fix things. I opened the front door and called out. No response. The house was still. I walked into the bedroom, and everything shifted. There was nothing visibly wrong, no mess, no odd placement, nothing missing. But the air was thick with a scent I knew better than I knew my own. Floral. Soft. Sweet. It was her perfume. The one I gave my sister for her birthday the year before. She said she didn't like it, that it was too fancy. She made a whole joke out of it. And yet it was there. Lingering. Strong. Impossible to ignore. I stood in the doorway, frozen. My heart was beating in my ears. I slowly walked toward the bed and sat down. I leaned over the pillow and breathed it in. Yes, it was hers. And that's when I heard the water running. He was in the shower. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I just sat there, stunned. When he came out, towel around his waist, he stopped in his tracks. He looked surprised. Not guilty. Just surprised. He smiled. Asked what I was doing home so early. I shrugged. Said I missed him. He kissed my forehead like he always did. I asked if anyone had been by. He said no. I didn't mention the perfume. Not that night. That evening, I tried to talk myself out of what I'd felt. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she had dropped by. Maybe she'd used the guest bathroom. Maybe I was being paranoid. But something felt wrong. Off. Twisted. The next few days only made it worse. My sister texted me constantly. Harmless things, funny reels, check-ins, random questions. But she always asked where I was, what time I'd be home, what days I had off. And my husband, he seemed tense. He stayed home more but avoided eye contact. His phone never left his pocket. And then the necklace happened. I saw her at brunch with some friends. She was wearing a delicate gold necklace with a charm I'd recognize anywhere, 'cause I gave it to my husband for our anniversary. I asked her about it. She laughed. Said it was just something she picked up online. I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. But inside, something cracked. Till I couldn't confront them. I didn't want to be that woman, hysterical, accusatory, suspicious. So I did what I thought I'd never do. I bought a camera. A small, discreet one. Kind you hide between books. I placed it behind the bookshelf in our bedroom. It had a wide angle. Covered the bed, the door, most of the room. And then I waited. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. By day 4, I started to question myself. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd imagined everything. Maybe the perfume was old. Maybe she had left it on a sweater. Day 5, I checked the footage. My sister dropped something off. She stayed for 8 minutes. He wasn't home. Day 6, nothing. Day 7, I came home, locked the door, sat down and pressed play. Wednesday, 2:18 p.m. She walked into the bedroom, comfortably, casually. like she belonged there. She wasn't looking around. She wasn't nervous. She knew exactly where everything was. 2:19 p.m. He followed. He smiled at her. She laughed. He closed the door. Then his voice clear as day. She won't be home for hours. Hers. Then we have time. I paused the video. I couldn't breathe. That was all I needed. I didn't need to watch what came after. I knew. They weren't just having an affair. They were comfortable in it. Confident. Shameless. In our bed. In our home. While I worked. While I trusted. I didn't cry. Not then. I turned off the video. Sat still. Stared at the wall for maybe an hour. Maybe 2. And then, I planned. I sent out dinner invitations the next morning. Everyone said yes. My parents. His parents. Our closest couple friends. My sister. Him. I told them I was cooking something special. That I had news to share. I spent all day prepping. Cleaning. Lighting candles. The house smelled like rosemary and lemon and betrayal. They arrived at 7 sharp. Laughed. Toasted. Complimented the wine. My sister wore a red dress. My husband kissed me on the cheek. They acted normal. Like nothing had happened. After the main course, I stood up. I have a video I want to show you all. Connected my laptop to the TV. Pressed play. Silence. The footage began. 2:18 p.m. She entered. He followed. She won't be home for hours. Then we have time. Forks dropped. Wine glasses stilled. My father looked like he couldn't move. My mother whispered, "Oh my God." My sister stared at the screen, then at me. Then she ran out. He stood up. Sat back down. Opened his mouth. Closed it. I turned off the TV. Looked around the room. "Dessert is in the fridge," I said. And I sat back down. The next day, I filed for divorce. Changed the locks. Blocked them both. Donated the camera. A week later, I got a voicemail from my sister. She cried. Said she messed up. Said she missed me. Said, "I'll never forgive myself unless you do." I never replied. I found the perfume bottle in our bathroom cabinet. The same one I gave her. I tossed it in a donation box. A few days later, I walked through a store and passed someone wearing it. I froze. Then smiled. Because I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel rage. I felt free. They thought their secret would destroy me. But it set me free. Now I know what betrayal smells like. But I also know what survival tastes like. And I know exactly how quiet power sounds. I used the days after the confrontation to rebuild myself. The silence in my home was loud, yet I felt more alive than ever. I walked through empty rooms, touching walls, opening windows, feeling the air inside me shift. Every morning, I'd wake up and feel the absence of him first. The space next to me, cool, untouched. Sometimes I'd reach out, expecting warmth, only to remember he wasn't there anymore. Yet, even in the void, I found new fragments of strength. One afternoon, I sat in our old living room, clutched an old photo album. Our wedding pictures, smiling faces, my sister standing beside me. I traced the photo edges, ran fingers over her name, and remembered when she told me, "You're my best friend." I remembered childhood fights, shared secrets, sleepovers, whispered dreams. In those early years, we promised sisterhood above all else. I never thought betrayal could grow from that soil. Then came the phone call. My father, voice quivering. "I don't understand, daughter." I didn't respond. I only listened to each breath. His heartbreak weighed more on me than my own. My mother wept. My siblings were in disbelief. They sent messages, visited my door. I barely answered. Through those days, I rediscovered parts of myself I'd left behind to be wife, partner, cozy household. I revisited old journals, relit my dreams. One evening, I sat on the balcony, burning scented candles, lavender, sandalwood, to replace the perfume's ghost. In the flickering glow, I whispered to the darkness, "You will not haunt me." In the months that followed, I leaned into my work, my passions. I traveled to a city I had always wanted to visit. I met new faces. I laughed more than I had in years. My sister's voice reached me rarely. A text, "I lost so much more than you." Another, "You'll regret this." Silence in return. He tried to contact me. "Let's talk. Meet me." "I'm sorry." I blocked him, deleted his messages. I refused to revisit the grief. One night I received a letter. No name. Just words on paper. "You taught me love. I taught you betrayal. I pray you heal." I read it twice. Folded it. Placed it among old letters and let it sit. In therapy, I allowed myself to feel every fragment of pain, humiliation, heartbreak, disbelief. Then anger. Then relief. I learned how to speak again about my needs, my boundaries, my worth. Then came the day I returned to that bedroom, the one where it all happened. I stood in the doorway, held my breath, then stepped inside. The walls still held whispers. The bed still held echoes. I opened the closet. His clothes had been removed. Perfume bottle was gone. Camera was gone. I ran my hand along the nightstand, opened drawers, flicked through papers. Nothing remained but emptiness. I closed the door behind me, walked out, and locked it for good. Years later, I found myself in that same city I had dreamed about. Walking through a crowded street, I saw a window display, perfume bottles in glass domes. A familiar scent, soft florals, wafted across the air. For a moment, my breath caught. But then I kept walking. I had moved forward. I remembered betrayal. But I remembered resilience more. They thought the wound would define me. Instead, it refined me. Now, when I smell a faint floral scent, I don't flinch. I close my eyes. I breathe. I feel alive. Strange how betrayal doesn't just break your trust in others, it also shatters the version of yourself you thought was safe. After everything exploded, I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. Not because I looked different, but because I felt foreign. I was no longer the woman who waited for texts, who planned Sunday lunches, who laughed at inside jokes that hid outside secrets. I was quieter, more still, but also stronger. I spent weeks in silence, no music, no shows, no distractions. Just me and the thoughts I'd spent a lifetime avoiding. And in that silence, I remembered someone. Me. The girl I used to be before I was someone's partner. The girl who used to draw late into the night. The one who wanted to open her own art studio. The one who got lost in stories and painted skies on ceilings just because she could. I found one of my old sketchbooks in a dusty box in the attic. Pages were yellowed, but the drawings were alive. I flipped through them slowly, like turning the pages of a life I forgot was mine. That night, I bought new pencils, new paper, a new lamp for my desk. I started to draw again, not for anyone else, just for me. A few weeks later, my brother came to visit. He hadn't spoken to either of them since the dinner. He brought takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on the floor, eating with plastic forks, laughing through the ache. "Do you hate her?" he asked after a long pause. I shook my head. "I don't hate her," I said. "But I'll never love her the same way again." That was the hardest part, really. Letting go of the version of her I had created in my mind. The one who would protect me. The one who would never cross that line. But she did. And now I had to love her from a distance I never asked for. A few days later, I saw them. At a gas station. Together. She was driving. He was in the passenger seat. They didn't see me, and for a moment I stood frozen in place. They looked normal. Not happy, not sad. Just two people who had made a choice. And suddenly I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel betrayed. I didn't feel anything, 'cause I was no longer part of their story. I was writing my own. 6 months later, I signed the lease for a small studio. It wasn't fancy. It had cracks in the ceiling and uneven floors. But it had light, and silence, and space. I painted every wall myself, hung up my drawings, started teaching kids on weekends, and slowly word spread. People came, and I smiled again, not the polite smile I used to wear, but something deeper, something earned. One day, a woman came in crying. She said she had just left her husband after finding out about his affair with her best friend. She looked at me with trembling hands and said, "I don't know who I am anymore." I sat with her for an hour. "I didn't know either," I said. "But you will, piece by piece, day by day." One rainy morning, I found myself staring at a blank sheet of paper. No intention, no plan, just a pen in hand and a heart full of words with nowhere to go. So I wrote a letter, not to send, not to deliver, just to let it live outside of me for once. Dear you both. I don't know what you tell yourselves when you think of me now. I imagine you believe I was distant, that maybe you fell into each other's arms, that it wasn't planned, that it just happened. But I saw the plan in the way you asked where I'd be. I saw it in how he stayed home more. I saw it in her eyes when she smiled too hard at my husband's jokes. I wasn't blind. I was just loyal. I didn't lose you. You lost me. And I hope someday the silence I gave you will echo louder than any confrontation ever could. I loved you both once. Deeply. Unconditionally. I don't anymore. And that's my freedom. Me. I folded the letter. Placed it in a drawer I rarely open. I never read it again. But writing it changed something in me. Like removing a splinter too small to see, but painful every time you touched it. Weeks later, I was at a gallery exhibit, just visiting, not presenting. One of the photographers featured there was someone my husband used to admire. I stood in front of a black and white photograph of two people walking away from each other. There was a quote underneath it. I don't remember it word for word, but it said something like, "Some stories don't end with goodbye. They end with silence and the strength to stay gone." I stared at that photo for a long time, not because I felt broken, but because I didn't. That same night, I received a message from my father. It had been months since we last spoke. "Your sister is getting married," he wrote. "I thought you should know." I stared at the screen. No anger, no jealousy, just a deep, soft sigh. Made sense in a way. Course they'd end up together. They already had a foundation built on secrets. Why not a wedding too? I didn't respond. I didn't ask when. I didn't need to, because that wasn't my world anymore. And I had no interest in revisiting rooms I'd already locked behind me. I went home that evening, lit a single candle, and stood by the window. The rain tapped the glass like it used to the day I wrote the letter. But I wasn't crying this time. I was humming. Just a soft melody. Something my mother used to sing when we were kids. Something that reminded me that I came from love. Even if I had been betrayed, I wasn't made of betrayal. I was made of survival, of new starts, of the kind of forgiveness that doesn't involve reunion, just release. 2 years passed. Not rushed, not forgotten, just lived. They say time heals everything. I don't believe that. Time doesn't heal. Choice does. You choose to wake up and not check their name. You choose to answer when joy knocks again. You choose to stop replaying scenes that once haunted you. And over time, the choices become quieter, softer, until they stop feeling like choices at all, and just feel like who you are. One Sunday morning, I opened my studio early. I had just made coffee and was putting up a new piece on the back wall, something I had painted after a walk through a foggy forest. A man walked in, mid-30s, warm smile, curious eyes. He said he was looking for a gift for his sister. I helped him pick a framed piece of abstract blue and gold. He asked if I painted it. I said yes. He smiled and said, "It feels like it forgives something." I blinked. He didn't know my story, but he had read my art. That's when I realized, even the things I didn't speak out loud were healing, and they were being seen. A few months later, we went for coffee, then a museum, then a concert in the park. No promises, no pressure, just presence. He didn't ask about my past. I didn't offer it. And that was okay, because healing isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing not to let it define what happens next. That year, my studio was featured in a local magazine. They wrote, "A small place full of stillness, color, and quiet strength." I framed that line because it was the truest thing anyone had written about me in years. Not the woman who was cheated on, not the sister who was betrayed. Just me. Quiet strength. The last time I saw my sister, it was from across the street. She looked different. Older, maybe. Or maybe I was just seeing her without all the stories I had wrapped around her. She didn't see me, and I didn't call out, because I had nothing to say. No bitterness. No rage. No longing. Just the calm that comes when the storm has long passed and all you hear is wind in the trees. I still keep that letter I wrote, the one I never sent, not out of sentiment, but to remind myself of what I survived. Sometimes I take it out, not to read it, just to feel its weight in my hands, to remind myself that was real, but it's no longer mine to carry. So here I am now. Not a perfect person. Not someone who won anything. Just someone who chose herself. One decision at a time. One boundary at a time. One silent goodbye at a time. They thought their secret would ruin me. They were wrong. Gave me back everything I had forgotten. Myself. My voice. My peace. And my power. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. Not even the version of life I once thought I couldn't live without. Because this version, not grief, just stillness, and maybe something like grace. I don't know if I believe in God the same way I used to, but I believe in moments like that, where something inside you shifts and you know without words that you're going to be okay. Weeks later, I got a call from my mother. She had kept her distance after everything happened, respecting my silence. This time, she simply asked, "Can I come see your studio?" I said yes. She arrived with a box of old photos, ones I hadn't seen in years. There was a picture of me and my sister in matching pajamas. We must have been 6 and 8, smiling, arms wrapped around each other. My mother held the photo and whispered, "You both were so close." I nodded. I didn't say anything, 'cause some pain doesn't need words, just acknowledgement. We didn't talk about the betrayal that day. We talked about paint colors, about childhood stories, about the silence that had lived between us, and how maybe it could finally go rest. Months later, a woman came to one of my art sessions. She had just gone through a divorce. Her eyes were hollow, her voice barely above a whisper. After the session, she stayed behind. She said, "You look like someone who's seen the worst of people but still decided to be kind." I laughed. Then I told her something I hadn't said aloud before. I didn't survive this to be angry. I survived it so I could show others how to get through it without losing themselves. She smiled. She came back every week after that. There's a journal on my nightstand now. I write in it almost every night. Not about pain anymore, but about what I'm learning. To trust again. To rest. To love gently, slowly, without fear. Not because I expect it to last forever, but because I know now, even if it doesn't, I'll still have me. If I ever write a book, it won't be about betrayal. It will be about everything that came after. The rediscovery. Quiet bravery. The mornings I got out of bed when all I wanted was to disappear. The people I met. The woman I became. 'Cause betrayal isn't the climax of my story. It's the turning point. And this life I live now by choice, by design, by voice, this is my real beginning. There's a certain kind of freedom that doesn't come with loud declarations or grand gestures. Comes quietly. In the way you no longer wait for apologies. In the way your chest no longer tightens when their names are mentioned. In the way you finally wake up without them in your mind. That's how I know I'm free now. Not because I moved on in the way people expect, but because I've moved inward. I've returned to myself. The version of me that doesn't shrink, that doesn't overgive, that doesn't beg to be chosen. 'Cause now I choose me. Every day. Without apology. I no longer visit the past to punish myself. I visit it sometimes to thank it. Because if none of it had happened, I might still be asleep inside someone else's version of my life. I might still be decorating a house where my trust was rotting behind every wall. I might still be ignoring that quiet little voice that whispered, "Something isn't right." But now, that voice is no longer quiet. She's my compass, my anchor, my friend. And when people ask me, "Don't you wish it had never happened?" I tell them this. I wish I had never been lied to, but I'm glad I found the truth. Because it gave me back everything I lost, even the parts of myself I didn't know were missing. This story doesn't end with revenge, or bitterness, or even justice. It ends with a woman who walked through fire and didn't burn. She melted down the pieces. She reshaped herself. And now, she shines in silence, no longer trying to be what others want, no longer performing peace while bleeding inside, no longer waiting to be loved the right way. Because now, she loves herself the right way. And that is the true ending. Or maybe, just the beginning.